It's your Tuesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everyone's having a great day out there today. Terrific show coming up for you today. Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune will join me here in just a few minutes. We are going to talk Gopher men's basketball, Niko Medved's first roster, how that is coming together. 6 additions in the transfer portal already, plus 2 holdovers from last year and an incoming freshman recruit. That's 9. A lot of good ones in there, but they still have some work to do to fill out this roster. Marcus and I will get into what they've done already, who the higher profile players in that group might be, what they might be looking at going forward in the portal. Some wild hockey at the end of the show. Big one tonight. They can clinch a playoff spot. We'll go through all the scenarios, as well as a young player expected to make his NHL debut tonight. Lynx draft and overall WNBA draft with Paige Bueckers going with the first pick to Dallas last night. We'll get into that in addition to a Lynx trade that probably has more of an immediate impact on their roster than any of the 3 draft picks they landed. First, though, what did I miss? I had kind of a strange thought as I was putting my son to bed last night. It was right as the Twins game was, I wasn't over yet, but it was more or less over. It was already 5-1 Mets, I think, and we were reading one of his kind of prehistoric animals books, kind of like giving the evolution. It's one of these books that has kind of a long wind-up, gives you kind of the evolution of time, history, the plants evolving, eventually dinosaurs, which is the part he really was interested in, and then other animals and things like that. I'm reading this book with him, and we're kind of going through we got to start at the beginning. We can't just skip to the dinosaurs, even that's the part he wants. He wants to start at the beginning. The scientists believe Earth was formed 4.6 billion years ago. For a long time, there's no life, right? It's just gas. It's just a gassy planet. All this stuff is kind of taking its time to ooze into shape. Eventually, there's like some very basic organisms that start to grow in the ocean. Then there's plant life in the ocean. No land animals for a very long time. Nothing really happening on land. Everything happening in the ocean. But eventually, we get to a time when there's plant life outside of the ocean. A lot of this is happening in like kind of marshy, swampy areas near the ocean. So it's still kind of like wetlands, but there is still stuff growing outside the ocean, which facilitates then, animals that can live outside the ocean because then they have something to eat outside of the ocean. Eventually, you get a whole bunch of land animals, you get dinosaurs, you get the evolution. Eventually, you get to, more complex creatures, you get to humans eventually. And like intellectually, we know this. We've heard this before. We've been taught this before. I've read this book to him before, but it's striking me in a different way last night. I'm reading it, and I'm like, okay, 4.6 billion years from the kind of this explosion, all these gases to very basic life in the oceans, millions, billions of years, all leading up to this moment where we are right now, just so Twins pitchers can throw the ball away past first base. That's all I can think about as I'm reading this book. After I'm done, kind of read this book, and I'm sitting there with him. He's falling asleep. I'm sitting there like, all of this evolution, all of this time brought us to this moment where Twins pitchers have committed 6 errors this season. 6 errors. They have not been able to throw the ball to first base. Twins pitchers committed 2 more errors last night. Both of them relief pitchers, Justin Topa, Jorge Alcala, both of them resulting in runs. It was 1-1 when Joe Ryan left that game. He pitched pretty well, although the pitch count got up. He could only go 5 innings. Gave way to the bullpen. Supposed to be the strength of this team. Maybe it still is. The pitching hasn't been that bad. The starting pitching has been great, by the way, lately. The last 7 starts for the Twins, team ERA for the starters below 1. You would think, man, they must be on a heater. They are 2-5 in those 7 games because A, they can't hit, B, they can't field, C, sometimes the relief pitchers give it away, or D, all of the above, as was the case on Monday night. So it's all of this has led up to this moment where relief pitchers for the Twins, or just pitchers for the Twins in general, can't make a simple throw to first base. They lose 5-1 in the opening game of the series to the Mets. They only get 3 hits for a good part of the night. They had as many hits, 2, as errors, 2. Both of those, the aforementioned throwing errors by the pitchers. couldn't field. The pitching wasn't good enough because they gave up 5 runs, even if they weren't all earned. Certainly couldn't hit, and that's been the theme. That's been the most consistent theme throughout the year. We were worried about the starting pitching at the beginning of the season, but the starting pitching, like I said, has certainly come around. The hitting has not come around. This is the 9th time in 17 games this season that they have scored 2 or fewer runs. More than half their games, they have scored 2 or fewer runs. 5-12 record, tied for their worst start in history. Carlos Correa very succinctly said, "It feels exactly like late last year." Of course, the Twins finished 12-27 last year, 5-12 this season. So that's 17-39 spanning those 2 seasons. That is not good. We have to figure out a way to bounce back and make sure this doesn't dictate the rest of the season. We're still saying only, I think, still only 17 games, but it doesn't feel like much hope is there. Smallest crowd in Target Field history, barely over 10,000 announced. That was probably generous based on who was in the seats. You looked at the pictures. You looked at TV at the start of the game. There's nobody there. Not a nice night. It was blustery, windy. There was a little bit of rain eventually. Nicer day today. Might get a little bit better crowd with a little bit better weather. Day game Wednesday should be pretty nice weather. I think I'm going to get over there for that one. My Target Field debut for this season. Haven't made it over there yet. I want to see it. I want to feel it with my own eyes. I want to experience it, experience the atmosphere, whatever that is worth. Kind of take it all in. Because right now it's just so negative. It's very negative right now. Evolutionary speaking, it just doesn't feel like this was worth it, right? Like all this time, all these things leading up to that moment, and you're like, this is what it was for the Twins to get to this point, to be 5-12, to have their pitchers not be able to throw to first base. Was this worth it? Did you crawl out of the ocean for this? I don't know. Anyway, that was just my strange thought last night. Twins not going well. And we'll see if it gets any better the rest of this year, or if they continue to devolve into the worst versions of themselves, kind of like they were at the end of last season. In the WNBA draft on Monday night, no surprise at the top. Former Hopkins standout, former UConn standout, just won a national title, Paige Bueckers, number 1 overall to Dallas. Again, no surprise there. She was expected to be the number 1 overall pick, and she was, so huge. Congratulations to her. The Lynx were busy. They traded their 2026 first-round pick for Carly Samuelson, veteran who can shoot the ball, figures to play prominently for the Lynx in 2025 as they try to go all in is the right word, but this is a big year for them. They came so close to winning a title last season, and then this year is the last one before basically a lot of people become free agents after this season. It's going to become the Wild West of the WNBA after this season because of new kind of collective bargaining stuff. So this is a year to go for it, to load up on veteran players. The Lynx do that by trading their 2026 first-round pick for Carly Samuelson. If the year goes the way they hope it will, that will not be a high pick. And the one they traded away recently was the 11th overall pick in this draft. They traded that for that pick that they now traded for Carly Samuelson. So that was something they did. They also got 3 draft picks. Their biggest one overall was a 15th overall pick in the second round. Russian forward Anastasia Olarikosu. They took 2 more players later in the draft. None of them, I would figure, to play prominent roles for the Lynx in 2025. That's kind of how the WNBA generally goes. There's the rosters are still pretty tight. You don't have a lot of teams still in the league, even with expansion coming. So you got to factor that in. You just there's not a lot of roster spots still. So unless you're a top 5, top 10 pick, you might not play right away. So I think that's kind of where they're going, drafting players for the future when they could have a greater need down the road. But right now, the Carly Samuelson pickup was probably the biggest thing they did in hopes of, getting back to where they were last season, so close to winning a championship, maybe getting over the hump and winning a title this season. Let's talk Gophers men's basketball, specifically recruiting today with Marcus Fuller from the Star Tribune. Marcus, how you doing?
Oh, not bad. Just got back from St. Cloud over the weekend, watching my son play his first AAU tournament. So, and the Gophers decided to have a couple commitments. News always happens. Doesn't matter what you're doing. So, looking forward to seeing who they added, and obviously we get to talk about it more now.
Yeah, we knew going into this off season that they'd have a lot of work to do, especially once they made the coaching change. I mean, they already had a lot of players to replace because they had a lot of seniors on Ben Johnson's last team, but then you lose a couple recruits, you lose a couple more players to the portal. All of a sudden, Niko Medved had 2 players on his roster, both of them, young players, Isaac Asima and then the Grayson Grove, who was redshirted. You knew he was going to have to add maybe, 10 players in the portal. Like, I don't know exactly what the final number is going to be, but he's already added 6, plus has an incoming freshman recruit. That makes 7. So the roster is 9. It's going to get bigger than that. But Marcus, what I hopefully want to know from you is the 6 that they have added so far in the portal, including a couple that just happened in the last couple days. I'm not going to ask you to rank all 6 of them, but where does this put them in terms of who are some of the bigger names that they've been able to add through the portal so far, and where does this kind of put them in relation to the rest of the conference doing their work in the portal as well?
Yeah, I mean, when Niko Medved got hired, it was pretty clear that he was going to have to fill most of his roster. Ben Johnson had a senior laden class, 10 guys, on their way out. There was a few that had eligibility left. And, he met with them pretty quickly and they decided to move on. And, he really locked in the 2 players that all wanted to be there and also that he coveted in Isaac Asima and Grayson Grove, 2 freshmen from Minnesota. And after that, he hit the portal and they've been adding players ever since. And you knew that they were going to go with transfers. I mean, high school recruiting is something that I think that Niko Medved is still going to prioritize in the future. But again, it was important for him to add a lot of experience. And, it's hard to rank these guys, right? Because a lot of these guys have played at the mid-major level. You kind of rank them at where their offers had come from in the portal. Guys like BJ Omat, he's a transfer from Cal. Minnesota guy from Mankato, 6'8" wing, really can play multiple positions and also guard multiple positions. He visited Minnesota and ended up committing pretty quickly. But again, when he entered the portal, there's a bunch of high major teams that were after him. He fits a lot of needs for people. So I would put him, near the top of the list. Again, when Colorado State was in the NCAA tournament, even before that, and Niko's name was mentioned as a coach, people started looking at the Rams roster, right? And
sure,
and thinking, who could follow him? And one player only followed him, which was a little bit of a surprise. But that was Crocker Johnson, Jalen Crocker Johnson.
Right.
He's a 3-4. He can play both small forward and power forward, probably guard even the 5. Decent shooter, really good, strong athlete. I see him because he understands Niko Medved's system, probably the best of anyone on the team. I expect him probably to make one of the biggest impacts of the newcomers. And then you just go down the line. I mean, if you're returning 2 players, you're going to need depth at every position. Mm-hmm. But they just got a commitment from Western Michigan's Chancey Willis Jr. And, if you look at the game today, mid-majors, players that come into the high major level, when it comes to immediate impact, a lot of them are guards.
Sure.
And, they're going to probably expect that from Chancey Willis. He was a second team all mid-American Conference player. You look at the assist numbers, average nearly 6 assists, but he's also a playmaker, can get his own shot. And they're going to probably, have him play right next to or share the point guard role with Isaac Asima. So that would be definitely something that in his first year, the point guard position is something that they needed to figure out. And having a young point guard of the future and having a senior come in and, take a lot of that experience load off of Asima's shoulders, that'll be huge. But one of the players that I was surprised about, I think a lot of people were, Northern Colorado, Langston Reynolds.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I was over the weekend, I was watching my son play AAU basketball, and, after his game, he played in the championship of this 15U tournament. And, he said, "Hey, Dad," he said, "Hey, Dad, I heard the Gophers got a guy named Langston Hughes." And I said, "Whoa."
That's wrong, Langston. Yeah.
That'd be a legend, And,
that'd be a great move. Yeah.
But no, I think that, it's funny that he made the mention of Langston Hughes, because I think of that name, and I'm sure that's probably why his parents named him after that legend. But if you look at the impact that he could have as a 6'4", very athletic slasher, but he also shot 40% from 3-point range. He did take a visit to Texas A&M. And immediately when I saw his video, I just thought of Vince Greer.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He resembles him a little bit, with his hair. Got some dreads and but also his length at 6'4". Vince, I think, was 6'5", but he was very long and just fluid athlete. He runs the floor, but he's finishing over guys on the break, gets to the basket pretty easily. And, again, this is a guy that's a high level outside shooter as well. And Vince, he didn't take a lot of threes, but he's pretty efficient offensive player. So I know that takes Gophers back quite a few years. I mean, that's 20 years. But again, this is a guy that if you're going to make an impact at the high major level, you're going to have some physical tools, as well. So his length, his athleticism, that could translate right away. They're obviously needing a lot of impact at the guard position, losing everyone except for Isaac Asima. So he's a guy that the high majors were after at pretty much every high major league. A school from that league he was contacted by. So I think it was a big get for them. And it was a surprise to a lot of people because his name wasn't mentioned with Minnesota too much, but these guys know what they're doing, and there's other names, that I don't want to leave anybody out, but
sure.
I have to mention my alma mater, San Jose State,
right?
Robert Viola. He's
someone they're familiar with, right? Because he saw them a lot. And
half Tongan. You notice his name, Polynesian name. Immediately when I saw that, when I talked to him, I said, "Are you from? You have family in Hawaii?" Because I was born and raised in Hawaii. And he actually did, but he hasn't gone there too much. And I said, they have the Spam Museum here in Minnesota. He was pretty excited about that. He's like, "There's no way their Spam Museum is in Minnesota." I said, "Yeah, they actually made Spam here." So, he can't wait to get here. But again, the familiarity that you talked about with Niko and his staff,
right?
They played against San Jose State and Tim Miles in the Mountain West Conference. He actually started his career at Fresno State. So he's been in the the Mountain West for 4 years. High level rebounder. He had games of 18 and 19 rebounds. He's a little undersized for the center position, especially at the high major level. But again, his ability to rebound and his strength and 260 pounds, that physicality, I think that will allow him to make an easier transition. And, he's similar to Frank Mitchell last year. Frank Mitchell was a front court player for Ben Johnson that, he maybe struggled a little bit in the beginning of the season with the speed and the size of high major basketball. But eventually he was their biggest front court presence,
right,
next to Dawson Garcia. So, similar player in Robert Viola. And then again, we maybe bury the lead, but I think possibly the best player out of all of them as far as the rankings go, they do have transfer rankings. Bobby Durkin from Davidson.
Okay.
He's actually a 4-star transfer recruit, which again, these transfer rankings
Take it for what it's worth, but yeah,
it started, probably a couple years ago as far as the true rankings of players. But this is a guy that has a lot of size for his position, 6'7", 220 pounds. He shot the ball extremely well at Davidson. Was primarily a shooter, but he played multiple positions and really developed his game over the last couple of years at Davidson. Out of high school, he wasn't recruited too highly. Went to prep school at IMG, and then really, ended up getting some decent offers, but at the mid-major level, and he chose Davidson. They do a really good job of developing their players there, and he was one that, last season turned into one of their best scorers, but all-around players. I mean, he averaged a few assists. He could rebound. With his body, he finishes inside, but also has that range. So, again, if you look at the class that Niko brought in, what you really notice is there's a lot of size for perimeter players. There's only one true big man, but the perimeter players all are 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", and 6'8" even, and that's the kind of size that you need at the high major level if you're going to defend different spots, and also just be able to translate quickly from the mid-major level to high major level. And I don't want to leave anybody out, obviously, but I think that this class in general is one that there's tons of guys that were offered by other schools. So I think they did a really good job beating out some other high majors. Kai Shinholster, didn't want to leave him out. He's a freshman.
Right.
He was the only player in Ben Johnson's 2025 recruiting class to stick with his commitment and his signed letter of intent. And again, he's another guy that has size for his position, 6'5". He could play both guard positions, and he's going to have to add weight, I think, to be able to truly be able to hold his own at the Big Ten level. But very skilled player, played for a really good high school in Philadelphia at Penn Charter, who has commitments to Northwestern and LSU on his high school team. They were one of the best teams in that area. Mm-hmm. So again, if you play for a winning team, and again, you played at the high level in high school, we've seen that before, where a Cam Christie and an Isaac Asima, they've come into the Big Ten and to Minnesota, and they're ready to contribute as freshmen. So I think that's a good sign for Niko Medved that he was able to keep Kai Shinholster as well.
Is the 6 guys they've brought in through the portal so far, and obviously they lost a few through the portal as well, is the caliber of player they're bringing in, without knowing exact NIL figures, without even knowing, this is even like we're very early in even the revenue sharing discussion, and that's still finalizing very soon, right? That's this month. That's supposed to be finalized by the judge. Without knowing specifics, is this indicative in your mind of more opportunity, or more like Niko Medved having more kind of resources at his disposal to go and get players? Because this does seem like a higher caliber maybe of players just on balance than what they were able to bring in the Ben Johnson era.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Things have changed quite a bit, financially or money-wise, what players can get. Last season, they were able to retain Parker Fox, Dawson Garcia, and Mike Mitchell. And, Dawson, reportedly turned down $1 million, to go elsewhere. Well, $1 million in today's market, that's probably not even the top starter on a really good high major team. Mm-hmm. So that has changed quite a bit. I think what people are getting, even, low end starting players are getting what, Dawson and some other guys might have got last year. And so I think that just to be able to compete in this transfer market with players, even ones that maybe last year mid-level guys for high major programs are getting paid top level dollars this year. So it's really about positions. If you look at numbers of guys, I'm talking about production. There might not be 20 points per game or first team all league guys that are getting paid quite a bit. Point guards, and I think in big men, particularly big men with size, arguably are getting overpaid, based on their production. But those are positions of need. And, I definitely think that, when it comes to what the Gophers are looking for, they definitely wanted to fill almost entire roster, but they were fighting for, the best point guards and big men that they could find. And there was a guy at Colorado State that was very highly coveted, Kyan Evans, that, is considered the Gophers, and, obviously had a good experience with Niko Medved the last 2 years, developed him into a potentially all league type of guy. And now he's at North Carolina, and I don't, unfortunately, I don't think the Gophers were able to go as high as North Carolina. So, and that's not a shock, right? I mean, that happened last year. It would happen last year, and it would happen, in previous years when, things were under the table. But, I do think that the point guard position with Chauncey Willis and Isaac Asima, who was a guy that if he went into the portal, he would probably be one of the top young players at that position. And so I think they really have a good depth there, probably maybe better than they had the last couple of years. And, if you look at Elijah Hawkins that they lost a couple of years ago, when he was in the portal, he wasn't as highly coveted as this Chauncey Willis. I mean, Elijah Hawkins is 5'8". He went to the tournament, but he had a lot of turnovers in college. And Chauncey Willis is 6'2", former football player. He's a 195-pound guy that physically he can really match any point guard in the league with his strength, and then he's a high-level assist guy as well. So I do think they got a huge steal with the guards that they got recently. In Chauncey Willis and Langston Reynolds, two guys that if you just put Minnesota on their chest and didn't say where they had come from before that, like the mid-major level, they look like Big Ten guards.
Is that indicative? You mentioned a lot of the size that they're recruiting, and that doesn't seem to be an accident. Is that indicative? I didn't follow Colorado State much more than watching them in the tournament this year, which was 2 very good games. Is that indicative of how Niko Medved wants to play? Does he want size? Does he want guys that switch kind of seamlessly and kind of be able to kind of, especially defensively, is size kind of a hallmark of what we know of what he might be looking for in a roster?
Yeah, I mean, any coach would love to have size and athleticism at every position. But, I think the perimeter, again, is one where if you have guys that can guard, point guards or combo guards, really quick guys off the dribble, but you also can slide in and maybe defend in the post and rebound, that those are your most coveted players, especially defensively. And I think that, Colorado State, when they were winning a lot of games, defensively, they were able to really, limit teams. Memphis was a really good offensive team, and they did a good job there. I would say that Colorado State was undersized in the post, but that it made up for that when they had maybe bigger wings that were able to go inside and out. Nate Clifford is a guy that you're going to hear a lot during when the NBA draft workouts and things like that start happening here in the next month or so. And he was a guy that they got out of the transfer portal, and
Colorado, right?
Colorado State developed him, and now he's an NBA player, and he's going to be a guy that plays on the wing, but you can slide him over, maybe guard some point guards, shooting guards. He rebounded at a high level, and he's got a nice strong body, but he's one of the best athletes that you'll see.
He's good
at his position. So similar to, like I said, some of these guys that they're bringing to Minnesota, you wouldn't be saying, okay, this guy's going to play this position, that position. That they're definitely positionless and very versatile offensively and defensively.
Final thing for you, Marcus, I guess kind of a two-parter, but there's only 9 guys on the roster still, so there's got to be more to come. What do you imagine might be next for them in the portal? Not necessarily specific names unless you've got them, but positions or like places they need to get more of on the roster, and just what they've done so far plus what they could still do. I mean, I've been saying all along, and I think Niko Medved even said this in his introductory news conference, like, it's about building for the long term, but he wants to be competitive next year. It feels like they can be competitive next year, whether that means NCAA tournament is realistic or not, I don't know. But like, where do you think they can get to as early as next year based on what they've done so far? And like I said, what comes next in this process?
So you're asking me to make a
no? I just like how do you like the roster coming together? Like how do you think they will compare to other teams next year already? Just kind of with the glimpse that we've had of the players they're bringing in, it just seems to me like they're going to be more competitive next year based on what they've brought in. If
when you bring Niko to this podcast, which I'm sure you will at some point,
I'm trying to. I will
before the season starts.
Yes,
you're going to ask him that question, and
I am.
He won't be able to answer it. He'll be able to answer it better than me, but he won't answer that because he hasn't seen them practice.
Sure.
You're asking him before they even have a full roster. I have no idea as far as like trying to predict whether they'll make the NCAA tournament or whether they'll make the postseason.
Right.
But I do, like I said, I like the size on the perimeter.
Yeah.
That generally means that, okay, I can compete there. Especially defensively. Like you got to guard. If you don't guard in the Big Ten or any high major league, then you're not winning a lot of games. So they'll be able to defend the perimeter, in my opinion. Now you got your point guard, right? You got your veteran point guard and you got your young point guard. Now you need a big guy. I mean, they don't have a lot of size in the post. I mean, last year I thought they were undersized, and at least they had Dawson at 6'11". I think right now they need some size. Robert Viola, he's very strong, physical guy. He's going to push around some people, but he's going to have to, deal with some length. Guys 6'11", 6'10", and 7-footers. That some of them might be just as big as him. Frank battled in there last year, Mitchell. But a lot of times he just didn't have enough length. And so, looking for those guys, again, everybody's looking for that 6'11", 6'10", 7-footer that you can just plug in the middle. And then some of these guys can maybe even step out and shoot, Sure. And so I'm sure that they're looking for a guy that they can plug in at center or even rotate with Robert Viola. Who that is, not sure yet. But I'm guessing that will be the next big one. And then they have to fill out their roster. They might go young with some guys that you need to develop a couple years. Mm-hmm. But again, I think they got pretty close to what they need right now as far as immediate impact players. They just need a little bit more size.
Okay, I think that's fair. That's kind of what I was looking at too. Like I feel like like I said, the perimeter looks pretty, if not settled right now. They've got the core pieces in place, and now it's a matter of building it out from there. This is fascinating. Like the offseason is so much different than it used to be. And I think you wrote about the Gophers and St. Thomas the other day, kind of navigating the NIL world. And it's a completely different world for everybody, no matter what kind of level you're on, whether you're, Big Ten, one of the premier conferences, or whether you're, St. Thomas trying to go at it from, kind of the upstart position that they're in.
Yeah, they have to do more, as much, trying to create excitement for people to support the program financially than anything else.
Sure.
Dinkytown Athletes, the Gophers Collective, have talked about Niko Medved and his staff. They're out at a lot of events, trying to build the fundraising support for NIL. Yeah, shared revenue is coming. That means that the university, is going to share part of their revenue with athletes that they make, but you're going to have to generate a little bit more than that because of the money for these athletes. It's getting so high. I mean, are the Gophers going to have $1 million player for football or men's basketball? Yes, it's coming. If not already happened this coming season, and that's part of shared revenue, but that's also the support that Niko and PJ Fleck that they're generating for their programs.
Awesome stuff as usual, Marcus. We'll keep watching, keep refreshing StarTribune.com because it feels like every 15 minutes there's another transfer that they're getting in the portal.
Yeah, I gotta definitely keep my eye on social media because these guys are posting something every second.
Instagram, a lot of times that's the spot of choice for a lot of these guys. But we'll keep following it, Marcus. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll talk again soon, and hopefully, good luck to you. Good luck to the AAU season. Good luck to your son as well as time goes on.
Yeah, Langston Hughes. Remember the name.
Get his Langston's right. All right, Marcus. Thank you. Great stuff for Marcus. Great breakdown of the newcomers for the Gophers. Like I said, I've been impressed. I like the looks of this roster so far. I'll be interested to know what the final bill is for all these players and how that compares to, how the resources compare to what Ben Johnson has. Obviously, every team's got more resources going forward. All the major teams with the revenue sharing with the $20.5 million. But how do they compare to the rest of the Big Ten? Like ranking 1 through 18. That's what I'm going to be watching for. How many more resources is Niko Medved getting that Ben Johnson simply wasn't getting? I want to know that when it's all said and done. Speaking of when it's all said and done, let's go to the cooler. Wild regular season finale tonight. Zeev Buium expected to make his debut on the blue line for the Wild just days after ending his college career in the Frozen Four semifinals with Denver. The stakes couldn't be more clear for the Wild. 1 point tonight. Get it to overtime at the very least, and they have clinched the first wild card in the Western Conference. So they're not playing a great team tonight. Anaheim Ducks are out of it right now, so you would hope that they could put out a good effort, win this game, or at the very least, don't lose this game in regulation. As long as you don't lose in regulation, as long as you're tied at the end of regulation or win at the end of regulation, you have secured your playoff spot. You've secured your top wild card and then you played Vegas in the first round. That's true because they have the tiebreakers over St. Louis and Calgary. Both those teams play tonight as well. So if the Wild were to lose in regulation, but both of those teams also failed to win, the Wild would also be in a position to clinch. So a lot to watch tonight, but the simplest thing for the Wild to do is just to win or get to overtime tonight, and they will have clinched a playoff spot, clinched that first wild card spot, and they will probably do it with a rookie just making his debut just days after his college career ended, Zeev Buium. Get a good look at him. Maybe he's going to be in the postseason for them as well. We'll get a good look at him tonight against the Anaheim Ducks. That will do it for me today. Expecting to have Lavelle E. Neal III on tomorrow's show a day early, but that's how the schedule works this week. Lots of basketball and hockey content towards the end of the week as well as we get ready for playoffs for sure for the Wolves Saturday against the Lakers. Probably for the Wild as long as they take care of business or get some help tonight. That series, whatever, if it's against Vegas, probably right around the same time as the Wolves series would be as well. So we will see. It's going to be a busy weekend. Probably those home games are going to be around the same time as well. If both those teams are in the playoffs because they'll both start on the road and then be home at the same time. So it's going to get busy around here, but we like that. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll be back at it again tomorrow.